Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the additional skill RPA developer series, and the topic which we have chosen is databases. Prior to this video, we have already covered how you can install the SQL Server, what are the basics, how do you create, retrieve, delete the data, what are the aggregate, clauses, comments, operator, all of this we have already discussed. And as of now, we are exploring something which is called constraints. So in case you are new to the playlist and you do not even have SQL Server, you can just follow this playlist and you will get the SQL Server along with the basics as well. The link to the playlist is available in the description. In the SQL Server series, now we are looking at the SQL Server constraints. We already have seen what exactly is a primary key, foreign key and a unique key constraint. In case if you are new and you don't understand any of this, please watch the previous videos to get an idea of all of this. Today we are going to discuss something about the check constraints, and this would be our agenda. First of all, I am going to start with what exactly are constraints. This we have already defined, so I am just going to give a quick recap so that we understand today's topic. We are going to have a recap of primary key, foreign key and the unique key constraint. Then we'll jump to what exactly is a check constraint, how do you add it to a table, what are the varieties of check constraints which are available. When I add the check constraints, what are the benefit which I get, and all of this we are going to do with the help of step-by-step demonstration. In case you're coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest updates. So in SQL Server, constraints are the rules and conditions that are defined on a table to enforce the data integrity. It simply means that if I want to have my data which is accurate, consistent and reliable, I apply something which is called constraints. This we have already discussed in the first video, and these are the common constraints which are available: primary key, foreign key, unique, check, default and null. If you guys remember, when we talk about primary key, if I want to have a table where I do not want to have duplicate and null values, I was using something which was called primary key. It prevents the duplicate or the null values and it ensures that every record is unique. How did I create it? I simply write this key which is called primary key, which is here, and that way SQL Server treat this column as the primary key, right? All of this we have seen in a step-by-step demonstration. Next we talk about the foreign key, which was to enforce a referential integrity between two tables, right? Primary key was with one table. Foreign key we have seen was between the two tables to ensure a referential integrity. How do you do that? This is the syntax. We just write foreign key, department ID, references by which table I want to reference. So I want to reference the department table, department ID, right? So that is how you use the foreign key constraints. All of this again we have seen in a step-by-step demo, so not spending much time here, but this is just a quick recap. After that, we have seen something which is called a unique key, right? A unique key constraint simply means that no two values can be same in a table. A unique key constraint can be applied to a column or a set of columns, which means that no two rows in the table can have the same combination of values, right? And this also we have seen with a good example with this one, which was we created an employee table and we saw that no two employees can have the same employee ID, so we just write unique here. So that was a quick recap on the three things. Today we are going to discuss about something what exactly is a check constraint. Now, as the name suggests, check come from the word checking, right? I want to check something. So a check constraint in SSMS is a type of constraint that allow us to define a condition that must be true before I insert a row into the table. Okay. It is a way that enforces the data integrity by limiting what data can be stored in a column. With the help of check constraint, we can actually specify the Boolean expressions. When I say Boolean, I mean true or false. If the condition would be true, if the check is passed, then only the value would be inserted into the table. Otherwise, if the value is false, it would not insert the record into the table, right? So in case I have such a scenario where I want to have this kind of Boolean expression which I want to evaluate while inserting the data, I would use something which is called check constraint. This was the theory. Let's go to the SQL Server and see this in the real-time implementation. I am in my SQL Server Management Studio. I am connected to the same database, which is UiPath database, and I don't have any tables, right? For this demo, I deleted all the tables. Let's go here and I'll select something which is called new query. And let's try to create a table, right? I have already created the query. I'm just doing a copy paste here. Okay. So we want to create a table. The table name is employee. Employee ID is a primary key, right? A constraint. I hope you remember. We want to have first name, last name, age, but I have a condition that I want to make sure that whenever somebody is inserting the age should be greater than or equal to 18, right? I do not want to have any employees in my database whose age is less than 18, right? So how do I apply such constraint? The syntax is exactly the same. You just have to use this keyword which is called constraints, right? This is the name of the constraint, chk_age, and then this check is the keyword. Now what do you want to check? I just want to check whether the age is greater than equal to 18. And this thing is going to give me Boolean, either true or either false. If the condition is true, the record would be inserted. If the condition is false, the record would not be inserted, right? So this is a new table, guys. I am creating employees. I want to have a age column, but I want to have the age only greater than 18, right? Let's try to go here and I say execute. My table is created. Very simple, right? Let's try to insert some record into the table, right? How do I insert? I simply use a insert query. Okay, insert into employee. Okay, employee ID, first name, last name, and age, right? So these are the same columns. If you see the age, I am passing the age as 21. Is 21 greater than 18? The answer is yes, right? So if I go and try to insert this, you would see that one row affected. That means that one row was inserted, right? Let's quickly validate. I'll just write here select star from employees and execute. You can see the 21 is available. Okay, what happens if I try to insert a new record where the age is less than 18, right? So since this is a primary key, so I'll just increase this to 2, and here I would say that I want to do it for Sarah, I want to do it for Sarah Bush, and the age is, let's say, 16. The condition was age should be greater than equal to 18. There is a constraint, check constraint, which is applied to the table. Now if I go here and I try to execute, you would notice that SQL Server is not allowing me to insert a record into the table. It says that the insert statement conflicted with this guy. Okay, the conflict occurred in the database with this in the column age, right? And what is the constraint name? The constraint name is chk age. And what is the constraint? The constraint is age should be greater than equal to 18, right? So if I just make it to 18 also, right, age should be greater than equal to, right? So if I make it to 18 and if I execute, I was able to insert the record, right? Let's quickly validate, and you can see that I was able to insert 18 and 21, but anything below 18 I would not be able to insert into the table. How that is possible? That was possible because of using this thing, right? So we simply use constraint, check, and what exactly you want to check, right? So now I hope you guys understood what exactly is a check constraint. If that is the case, just comment down check so that I would understand that yes, you guys got the clear understanding of this constraint. Okay, I'll wait for your comments and let's move forward. Okay, so these were the two queries which I showed, right? How do you add a constraint? You just simply use constraint. This is the name of the constraint, check, and whatever condition you want to have. Okay, now to insert, you just use the normal statement. 21 was inserted successfully because this was satisfying. Otherwise, when we tried something different, it was not taking it. Okay, now let's say you already created a table, right? So for us, the table was freshly created, right? For us, the employee table was not there. But let's say I am working on some databases where the table is already created, and later somebody tells me that please add a constraint. So can I do that? The answer to that question is yes, right? To add a constraint to the existing table, right? We have seen that I had an employee table which has a constraint that the age should be greater than 18, right? Now let's say my business tells me that now you have to add one more constraint where you have to validate that the length of the last name should be greater than 2, right? You should have the last name, the number of characters should not be less than 2. So can I alter the existing table and add a constraint? The answer to that question is yes, right? And this is the syntax, alter table employees. Remember when we're discussing about the DDL and the DML thing, this is the same thing, right? Let's try to execute this alter statement in the SQL Server and try to see how does it behave. Okay, I am in my SQL Server. I have a unique constraint which is in the age column. But if I want to add a unique constraint on the existing table, we have to alter it. So alter table, table name is employee, add a constraint. This is the name of the constraint. Now what do you want to check? I want to check the length of the last name should be greater than or equal to 2, right? Let's try to execute this. And after this, whenever I am inserting the record, SSMS would now validate for two constraints. One is the date and the other is the last name. Okay. So let's try to insert a record, right? And in my table, I already have 2 records. So I'll make it to 3, right? Let me just change the name to Tom. And here, let me just put the age as, let's say, 15. If I try to insert this record, the same check age constraint is failing. I'll make it to 20 and check age constraint is working, right? Now let's try to insert a new record. Okay, and now my age is greater than 18, but my last name is having only a single character. The length is equal to 1. Let's try to insert this. It's a new record. So if I put it 4 and I say execute, you would see that you are getting an error for CHK last name, because we just added a constraint that the last name length should be greater than equal to 2. So that's why when I am inserting this record where the age is valid, this is not valid, it's still getting that error, right? What happens if I just put it to 12, right? The age is also not proper. So again, the check age, right? If I just make it to, let's say 31, right? And I just now make it to 2 characters. Now if I go and execute, you would see that 1 row is successfully inserted. Let's see the records. And as you can see, I have got all these records, right? Now, what happens if I again try to re-execute this? You would get something which is called primary key constraint violation, right? Remember guys, when I was creating the table, employee ID was the primary key, right? So primary key constraint also is violated. So that means that with the help of constraints, we make sure what data should be coming into the tables. So now in this employee table, I have 3 constraints. One is for the primary key, one is for the age, and one is for the last name. Okay, I hope you are following along with me. So let's go back to the presentation, right? So that is how you add the constraint to an existing table, right? Now you might have a thought that what are the varieties of check which I can include, right? Not only a single constraint, but you can actually use a couple of operators and you can get the check constraint. So just to give an example, let's say you have a table of employee and it has a column which is called salary. Now I want to check the salary should be greater than equal to. So that means that I can use the comparison operators. Not only greater than equal to, you can use equal to, less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than equal to, or not equal to as well, right? So I can say that check the salary where the salary is not equal to 10,000, where the salary is greater than 2,000. All of these operators can be used with check constraint to create a variety. The second point mentioned that you can also use the between operator. Let's say I want to create a database where the age is greater than 18 and less than 60, right? So I can always use this keyword age between 18 and 60. So any record where it is coming as 61, 80, 90, that won't be inserted, right? Between operator can be used. We can also use the in operator, right? Let's say I am creating a table and I want to have the gender only in male and female. So I say that constraint check the gender, check gender in male or female, right? So whenever you are inserting the data into the database, you can put only these 2 values. Not only this, you can also use the like operators. Remember guys, when we talk about the operators, we have seen that we have something called like, we have something called in. So when you are writing the check constraint, all of that can be taken into the consideration. How does the like operator work? That work with the help of wildcards. So I can simply add a constraint, right? Constraint, check the gender, check gender in, and you can use the wildcards as well. The possibilities are endless, but the concept is simple. The result should be a boolean, either true or either false. These are just a few examples of different varieties. You can have more kind of check constraints in your SQL table. Okay, so I hope you got an idea that what are the different varieties which can be made. The next one, how can I remove the constraints? So at this point I have added a lot of constraint to my table, but let's say someday I have a requirement where I want to remove the constraint as well. Again, it is the removal from the table, so that means that I need to use the alter table. Same like I was using alter table to add, I will use alter table to remove, right? So alter table implies drop the constraint chk age. If I execute the syntax, what would happen? The constraint would be removed from the table and you would be able to insert the data freely without any check. Okay, the drop constraint clause is used to remove the check constraint from the table. I hope this makes sense. I want you guys to execute this on your own and see if that works or not. Okay, whenever you are dropping any constraint, the check constraint will remove the constraint from the table, but it will not remove the data that has previously violated the constraint, right? It is important to ensure that the data in the effective columns comply with the desired validation before removing the check constraint. So that applies to while adding or while removing. SQL Server does not manipulate your data on its own, that we have seen in the previous constraint as well, right? So whenever we are altering an existing table, the SQL Server does not do anything with the data. So you have to make sure that your data should comply with the constraint whichever you are adding or removing. Okay, so I'll leave this for your implementation. The last thing today is what exactly are the benefits, right? What do I get if I apply the check constraint? The first thing is the data integrity, which simply means that check constraint help you to maintain the data integrity by enforcing the rules and the restriction. Data validation, it validates the data before even it gets into the table. You can adhere it on the number range, date range, string patterns, or you can have your custom requirements as well, right? Date format means you can always say that, hey, I do not want to record which is older than 1st January 1990, right? The next thing is simplified application logic. By implementing the data validation using the check constraint, we can simplify the application logic. The database itself is responsible for enforcing the rules. So if any application is built on top of this, the application do not have to worry about the data because the constraint is directly applied to the database. It helps you in error prevention. That means that it will reject the data that violates the default condition, right? Improve data consistency. Your data is consistent across the tables, right? And the last part is a better performance. Since check constraints are enforced at the database level, they can provide performance benefits. With this, it also improves the query execution time as well, right? So these are some of the benefits which we get if I use a check constraints on my database, right? So that is it all for this video. Let's have a quick recap. Today we have seen that we have a new kind of constraint which is called check constraint that allow us to define a condition or expression, but the result should be the true or false, right? It's a Boolean expression. There are a variety of check constraint which we can mix with comparison between in, like, count and get the desired result. We can always alter the table to add or remove the check constraints, right? So I hope this constraint is clear to you. If you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to drop me a note in the comments, or you can also drop me an email as well, right? With this, I would like to wrap this video here. I hope this video was helpful and now you got a clear understanding. I would appreciate your feedback on this video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, Please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.